All right, I will try my best to keep this under 10 minutes, but you know how I am. Once I get talking about books, it's hard to stop. So, this is a book called End of Watch. It is the third and final book in a trilogy, a Stephen King trilogy. It's called the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. I read Mr. Mercedes about a month ago. I just finished the second book, Finders Keepers, a couple of days ago. And I didn't have this book, End of Watch. So I looked at my parents and my parents, my wife, and my kids a couple of days ago, and I was like, we got to go to Barnes and Noble because I got to get the third book of that trilogy because I couldn't wait any longer. I don't know how a lot of you are, but when I'm reading a trilogy or a series, sometimes I want it to kind of be a slow burn. I don't want to blow through it because I get sad when it's over, but I can't wait any longer. I needed to find out what happens basically with this guy right here. So, to give you a little bit of context, in the book Mr. Mercedes, there's a crazy dude. This is him right here. His name is Brady Hartsfield. At the beginning of the book, he commits a heinous crime. It's basically an act of terrorism. And then the protagonist in the book, Bill Hodges, is a retired police officer who never solved the case of this terrorist act. And in retirement, he's kind of obsessed with trying to find the murderer. And the whole book is about his quest to find out who committed the crime and track him down. And he successfully does that with the help of one of his neighbors named Jerome and a woman named Holly. They work essentially as private investigators. And at the end of the book, they foil his being Brady's next attempt at a terrorist plot. He found his way into an arena. Basically, it was like a boy band concert, and he was going to suicide bomb the place. But Bill, Jerome, and Holly foil that plan at the end of that first book, Mr. Mercedes. And actually, Holly takes this weapon called the Happy Slapper, which is a big, huge sock filled with metal ball bearings, and she whacks Brady in the head with it and kind of deems him incapacitated. And when the first book ends, readers are led to believe that this Brady Hartsfield is brain damaged for life, essentially brain dead, and will never commit another crime. So in the second book, called Finders Keepers, Brady Hartsfield is a character, but a very minor one. You learn that he's at a traumatic brain injury clinic, and he's sort of in a vegetative state. But at the end of that second book, readers learn that he's actually not as brain dead as he's leading everybody to believe he is. You learn that he's maybe gained some telekinetic powers. There's rumors at the hospital that he's been making things move, like making water turn on and off in the bathroom, knocking pictures over, doing things basically with mind power. So obviously you get to the end of that book and you're like, oh, there's going to be something to that in the third book, and you're left hanging. So, like I said, I had to run out and get this book because I wanted to know what happened next. So, on the cover of the book, this is Mr. Mercedes, the Mercedes Killer. He's in a wheelchair now because he can't walk. At least we think he can't walk. But you might notice that he is looking at a screen. He is looking at a tablet-type device called a Zappit. And we learned early on in this book that he is able to, by looking into that Zappit, manipulate anybody who has one of those devices. So we're quickly learning in this book that he somehow, some way has gotten these tablet type devices into the hands of a lot of people upon whom he wants to get revenge. One of those people is Jerome that I mentioned earlier. Jerome's younger sister named Barbara. Barbara has one of these Zappit tablet devices, and there's a section in this book. In fact, it's the section that sticks out to me the most so far, where Barbara is in a really dangerous part of the city, and she's having just what I can only describe as really deep, dark thoughts. She's thinking suicidally. She's talking about maybe ending her life, jumping out into traffic or something of that nature. And as the reader, I found myself thinking, wow, Barbara, like, this is so different than your characterization in the first and second book. So I, of course, am kind of wondering what's happened to her. But then I start putting the pieces together, main piece being that she's been looking at one of these Zappit devices, and Brady Hartsfield's been communicating to her through it and has basically convinced her that she has no self-worth and that she should end her life. So The scene that I'm going to read to you is a scene that sticks out to me, and it's from page 160, so about 42 pages, exactly 42 pages before where I last stopped reading. Here it goes. It's about Barbara. Barbara hears a shriek of brakes and smells hot rubber. She looks to her left and sees a panel truck bearing down on her, the front end heeling to the left as the driver stamps on the brake. Behind the dirty windshield, his face is all dismayed eyes and open mouth. She throws up her hands, dropping the zap it. All at once, the last thing in the world, Barbara Robinson wants is to die. But here she is in the street after all, and it's too late. She thinks, my ride is here. So there's a lot of reasons that passage stuck out to me. And I would bet by the time the book ends, it won't be the most resonant passage by any means, but so far it is. It's sticking out to me, like I said earlier, because Barbara's just acting so differently than she ever did in any of the earlier books. So it's a section of the book where I'm realizing that Brady Hartsfield is 100% back, manipulating people, wreaking havoc on other human beings, which is exactly what he did in the first book. So despite the fact that we were led to believe that he's out of the game, he is not. So that's part of it. But also, I think one of the reasons I like that passage is it's very Stephen King-esque as far as him being really good with plot. And the reason that's a good sort of use of plot is that was right before a page break. And for all intents and purposes, a reader like me is supposed to think that she got hit by that panel truck and she's gone. So of course, I'm wondering, did she die? Did she not die? I think she died. How is this going to impact her family? How is this going to impact her older brother, Jerome? By extension, how is this going to impact Bill Hodges? Bill Hodges is the protagonist in the first book and this book here. He's the aforementioned retired police officer who's obsessed with Hartsfield. So I'm wondering, what's Barbara's death's impact going to be on him? What's he going to do next? But spoiler alert, like 25 pages later, you learn that Barbara didn't die. Somebody actually saved her. This guy that she was kind of sort of talking with, flirting with on the street, saw her kind of fall / jump into the road, and he saved her. He pushed her out of the way. She's pretty injured. She hurt her leg, and she's in the hospital now, but she is not dead. So it was kind of cliffhangery. It piqued my interest a lot. And when I read books, whether they're really literary and thought-provoking or just page-turnery plot books, I like when I'm thinking, when I'm engaged with the book, asking myself questions, asking myself why questions, trying to answer them, finding the answers. So I think that's really why that particular passage is the one that has stuck out to me the most so far. I'm going to finish this video with a shameless plug. If you like Stephen King books, if you've ever read Stephen King books, I know some of you have, seen his movies, check this series out. It's not as scary per se as most of his books. It's more of like a crime thriller type story, but it's sort of creepy and it's definitely page turners. So Stephen King's End of Watch passage that stuck out the most is the one that I just discussed. I look forward, I really do, to viewing your videos, and hopefully I'll see a bunch of them soon.